Hey, welcome everyone into the Wells Tech Garage for this week's episode of CounterPoint. Now today, guys, I got a 05 GMC Sierra in here, 5.3 liter V8 under the hood, in for a check engine light that I want to go over with you guys. This should be a quick and easy diag on here, but this thing was in, or is in here today for a second opinion. This thing's been taken somewhere else, had the check engine light diagnosed, and the customer is here today for a second opinion. So why don't we flip the key on here and get right into it. So we're working on a GM vehicle. All right, wait for this to load. All right, let's just do an automatic search. All right. It is the base radio. We got manual dual zone, under 8,600 pounds. Looking like rear drum brakes. All right, 5.3 liter V8, perfect. Let's do system select. It is VIN T. That is the 8th digit of our VIN number. If you're ever wondering engine code on your vehicle, the 8th digit is going to be the engine code. This is VIN T. It's definitely not a parallel hybrid. I'm thinking there might be an error in the scan tool here, but it is a 5.3 V8, so I'm gonna run with that for now and see what we got. So let's go DTC, read trouble codes. All right, we got a P0446 evap vent system performance, which makes sense. The customer came in here saying that the shop had quoted him for replacement of a vent solenoid. Now he was hesitant on doing it because his vent solenoid was replaced on this truck about 2 years ago or so. With the new updated design where you run the little breather filter up above the transfer case or the transmission. So he's had the job done already once before. That's why it's in here today for a second opinion. So let's take a look first of all what service info says for a P0446. It says this DTC tests the evap system for restricted or blocked vent path. So even though it says vent system performance, we're really talking about the path that allows flow in and out of the vent solenoid. If that were to become restricted or blocked, we're definitely going to have issues. Even with like refueling, you know, you're trying to refuel the truck. If you have a blocked vent path, you could have a hard time refueling. The nozzle could keep clicking off. So the control module is going to command the purge solenoid open and the vent solenoid close. So we're going to draw a vacuum on the system. Then we are going to close the purge solenoid with the vent solenoid still closed. We're going to watch it for a second, and then we're going to open the vent. And that vacuum that's been pulled down from the purge solenoid being open, we're going to pull the vacuum down in the system to a threshold. It should sit there with both the front door and the back door closed, and then we're going to open up our vent solenoid, and that vacuum should return back to atmospheric or 0 inches of water, according to this, with any calibrated time. If it doesn't, we set a check engine light on, okay? So basically it's saying our system could be restricted, we're pulling the system into vacuum, we're reaching our threshold, but we're not able to release that quickly or fast enough. So why don't we take a peek at our freeze frame. It's always a good place to look first after we pull our code. So freeze frame failure records. All right. So nothing good on that page. It was idling almost 70 degrees. Fuel tank pressure sensor radiator. This is kind of interesting. 0.22 volts. Now if you remember from the class that we had at the beginning of June, I talked about GM fuel tank pressure sensors and how they like to run opposite. On a normal vehicle, sorry, not normal, but just about every other vehicle, a fuel tank pressure sensor reading low in voltage would be equivalent to vacuum in the system. On a GM vehicle, it's just the opposite. Low on voltage, high on pressure. So the system would be pressurized right now, 0.22 volts. Whatever that is equivalent to in pressure, okay? And we can maybe see if there's I guess there's not a fuel tank pressure PID in terms of pressure, just voltage, so we might be able to find that under data. Let's see if there's anything else useful in here. Not looking like it. Okay, so we know now that when this code said our system was under pressure. We don't know how much, but it was definitely under pressure. So why don't we take a peek at what this is doing right now at this very moment. Let's grab some enhanced evap data. And I don't really need all of this stuff because really all I want to look at here is our fuel tank pressure. Let's just make sure our commands are both off, which they should be. We can grab fuel level, sure. But that's really all I need here because basically I want to see what this system is recording right now for pressure. Okay, fuel tank pressure sensor right here. 12.1 or 11.99 or 12.17 millimeter Hg. Our command is value 0, so our purge is definitely closed. Our vent solenoid says it's venting, so it should be open. So according to what we're seeing right here, fuel tank pressure 0.22 volts currently. So this thing is saying that we are under pressure right now, even though our vent solenoid says venting. All right, so I should be able to go over to the gas cap now. If I were to pull the gas cap off, I should allow any of that pressure that's maybe built up in the system, that 0.22 volts worth of pressure. If I pull the gas cap off, we should see that return back to that atmospheric level, and usually on these it's roughly 1.5 volts. Pull this off, and I'll leave it hang here. Let's take a look at the scan tool. All right, we are still at 12.17 or 11.99, still at that 0.22 volt value. Okay, interesting. So do we maybe have a bad fuel tank pressure sensor? Why don't we go ahead and try this? We're gonna go special functions, engine output controls, and I wanna go evap system, and I wanna do a purge seal. So basically what I want to do now is I want to run the engine. I'm going to put the gas cap back on. And you don't need a scan tool to do this. You can do this with jumper wires, closing the vent solenoid with a jumper wire and opening the purge solenoid with a jumper wire. Basically what we want to see is this tank able to draw vacuum, or is this system able to draw vacuum and maintain vacuum? And then if we pull the gas cap off, will we hear that vacuum release? All right, I'm gonna fire it up. Let it stabilize a little bit here, see if we got any data. I'd like to look at fuel tank pressure sensor in data. There we go, we'll grab enhanced. Oop, not tank, let's grab pressure and pressure. Okay, so you can see we definitely are still at our 0.22 volts. Our commands are off right now. Let's click increase and we'll start to draw vacuum. I just heard the vent solenoid click under there. So I think the vent is probably working. It definitely clicked. So we'll watch this scale up. And right now we should be drawing vacuum on the system. Even though our fuel tank pressure sensor doesn't seem to be responding, this should be moving. As we draw vacuum, our voltage should be going up around 3, 4, maybe even up to around the 5 volt mark, and we are getting nowhere. Even if this system were completely open right now, if our vent solenoid wasn't working at all, we should still see a change in this thing. This thing is still showing pressure. All right, so system seal. We're gonna leave the vent closed, we're gonna close the purge, and now this system should be sealed with vacuum in it. So if we have a stuck open vent solenoid, we shouldn't have built any vacuum in here. So if I were to pull this cap off right now, we should, if the system is functioning properly, we should hear a whoosh sound as the vacuum is released. And there we go. So this tells me we were able to release the vacuum in here. The thing was able to breathe. We were able to draw vacuum on the system with the purge open and the vent closed. It was able to draw vacuum, but our fuel tank pressure sensor never moved. It is still at 0.22 volts or 12.17 millimeters of Hg. Now, I'm no scientist. I don't know what millimeters of Hg converts to. So why don't we just go into a unit converter app and let's take a peek at what that converts to. So we're in science. I'm going to go millimeters Hg. Perfect. 12.17. So according to this makes more sense to me, inches of water. We're at 6.5 inches of water of pressure inside of this tank at all times, according to our fuel tank pressure sensor, which at this point I think is lying. Now, why don't we look at a wiring diagram and find out what it's going to take to take a peek at this fuel tank pressure sensor. All right, so here's our diagram up on the screen. Looks like we got our PCM, and all 3 wires from our fuel tank pressure sensor go back to the PCM. Let's grab red. So here is our power feed in. That's going to be 5 volts on the red. Here is our ground feed going back to the PCM. And then here's our signal wire going to the PCM out of the fuel tank pressure sensor. So that signal wire right now is reading 0.22 volts, when I said it should read roughly 1.5 volts at atmospheric. So if we take the gas cap off of this truck and we're looking at live data with the key on, we should see roughly 1.5 volts on this truck. And currently we are not seeing that. We are seeing the 0.22 volts. All right, so what I want to do now is we're going to go under the vehicle, disconnect this connector, and I want to see, I'm going to hook up my meter right here, and I want to see 5 volts right here. If we can see 5 volts there, we know the computer is able to send the power and our ground. You could put a test light across there. It should light up dimly because you're only working on 5 volts, not like a normal 12-volt circuit where it's going to light the test light bright. But we should see 5 volts there, and it wouldn't hurt to hook a meter lead here and just verify that we are getting that 0.22 right there. Because it's possible that we have a problem somewhere in this wiring between this point and this point that we could be dropping our voltage. So I want to check the voltage reading coming right out of the sensor and verify that we actually have that 2.2 volts right out of the sensor. All right, so I think at this point, I think it's time to go under the vehicle, pop the connector off the fuel tank pressure sensor, and do some testing on it. All right, so here we go. All right, so now that we have the vehicle up in the air, the key is on. Let's just take one more quick peek at our fuel tank pressure sensors and make sure they're still, or sensor, and make sure that it's still reading the same. Perfect, 0.22, 12.17, it is still reading improper, so why don't we take a look at what we have now. Now, on this vehicle, according to service information, in order to change out the fuel tank pressure sensor, you need to drop the fuel tank, and that's 2 some hours just to drop the tank, let alone perform any testing. Now, as you guys can see, fuel tank is still up in this vehicle, and that's because you don't need to drop the tank. So I'm going to show you guys how to get to it without dropping the tank. So as you can see here, we got our drive shaft, our muffler, fuel tank shield. The gas tank is, right behind here. We got wiring right here. This wiring is leading to our fuel tank pressure sensor as well as our fuel pump and fuel level sender. So this shield right here is sharp, okay? You could wear sleeves or something like that. That would probably help with reaching your arms up there. What I like to do is just take a roll of tape, rip some off of here, and just tape the edge, because I don't like my arms getting all cut up. So this just adds a little bit of protection for when you are trying to get up there without slicing your wrists open. All right, so I got a flashlight here. Let's zoom in a bit and let's see if we can't find those connectors up there. All right. So if I can get the flashlight in the right spot, there we go. We got 2 connectors. One has what looks like a gray GM locking tab on it, that one right there. That's probably going to be just a pull back tab in order to release that. I believe that's going to be the fuel pump connector. And that one with a little bit of yellow on it, the one that's further back, that is our fuel tank pressure sensor connector. So kind of hard to see, but if I can get to it with a mirror, I'm going to be able to get to it with my hands. Okay. Just throw the flashlight up here so I can get some light. And let's see what we got. So I'm just going to use a regular old 90-degree pick, and I'm going to grab that gray locking tab, and I'm going to pull that back. so that I can get the connector out, because I think if I pull both of these connectors, I think this wire right here will drop down. So I got that tab loose. This connector should pull out. All right, there's one. And the fuel tank pressure sensor right next to it is just a standard pull-up connector, and there we go. Here's our harness. Fuel tank pressure sensor has the purple weather pack on it here. So this is what we're chasing after. Now I mentioned in the wiring diagram right here that we are looking here and here. We're going to hook up with our voltmeter and we should see 5 volts. So why don't we just go ahead and do that now. I got the voltmeter out. Let's get it turned on. Get it so you guys can see it. How about this? There we go. You guys can see that pretty nice. And I'm just going to grab some back probes, and we're going between the gray wire and the black wire. I'm just going to go real gently right in the terminal and see what we got. All right, 5.008 volts. That makes me happy. I'm going to say that that is probably perfect. That's about as close to 5 volts as you're going to get. And I would expect it to be right around that 5 volt mark because it is computer controlled. So now I'm going to take my one lead here and go into the signal circuit on the back side. I'm back probing into our connector. And I'm going to take my other lead, go into the ground side. And all I want to do now is I just want to hook this, hopefully hook this back up and just see if we're getting that 0.2 reading. Of course, with 2 extra wires running up there, it's going to be harder to plug in. And turn the light back on. So there you go, 0.21, 0.2-ish volts. So I would say that our scan tool is not lying to us. Let's just take another look at the scan tool. So we're at 0.22 volts. We should see this change as I unplug this. There we go, we dropped down to 0.02. Now there's another thing we can do here, guys. Let's verify, because what if the PCM weren't working right? What if we had problems between our connector right here and the PCM? What if we had wiring issues or something like that? What I like to do is I like to take a fuse jumper wire, and be careful when you guys do this. You don't want to be doing this on pure 12 volt fed circuits. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a jumper wire and I'm going to jump between pin C and pin B with the jumper wire across here. And when I jump across those 2 terminals, I'm going to take my 5 volt reference and send it right into the PCM. So that being said, we should be able to go back to our scan tool. I should be able to jump these together, figure out which one B and C are. So gray and green. So I'm taking my fuse jumper wire. I'm just going to touch to that. And look at the scan tool. 5 volts. Take it away. 0. 5 volts. 0. So this is telling me that we're able to send voltage down to the connector, and the computer is then able to pick up on the signal circuit that it is receiving the proper message and that we don't have anything causing issues in between. All right, so this thing needs a new fuel tank pressure sensor. We have power, we have ground, and the computer's able to register the signal properly. So back up here. Now this fuel tank pressure sensor does not have any sort of bracket holding it in. It's only like a pressure fit type of connection, and it'll pull right out. There we go. So there is our fuel tank pressure sensor. So again, you don't need to drop the tank to do these on these GM trucks. Put a piece of tape or something over this so you don't slice up your wrists when you're going up there. And you can change out this fuel tank pressure sensor relatively easily. So I got a new one here. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to plug this into the connector. Now we should read atmospheric, right? Right around that 1.5 or so volt mark, because at sensor plugged in right now will be the same as atmospheric when the tank is being vented. Let's take a look at our scan tool, and there we go, 1.51 volts. So I am very happy with this result. It's doing exactly as I expected. I'm going to go ahead and unplug it. And now I'm just going to apply a little bit of grease to this gasket here, this O-ring here, because it goes in a lot easier then. Don't smother it. The goal here isn't to smother the thing. I'm just trying to make it install a little bit easier. All right, here we go. And this does it is kind of difficult because you have to do everything by feel. You can't really see up there unless you were to pull the bed off of the truck, but I can guarantee you that's going to take more time than this will. Oh, I dropped it. There we go. So the sensor should just about bottom out all the way against the sending unit, top of the sending unit. Let's take a peek at the aftermath here. Grab the flashlight down. Okay, so there we go. There is our new sensor. Zoom in a little more, you guys can see a little clearer, hopefully. So there it is, right next to our white connector of the fuel pump. All right. So sensor's installed. Now it's just a matter of plugging it all back in. And then remember to lock that gray tab back down. And there we go. Take one more quick look, make sure that it looks okay up there, and I think we should be good to go. Both connectors look secure. You can see that that gray tab is locked back down where it's supposed to be. All right, I'm happy with this. So let's take a quick peek at our scan tool again. So our fuel tank pressure sensor right now, 0.08 millimeter Hg, and fuel tank pressure sensor voltage, 1.49. This is where it's supposed to be. I'm happy with this. Let's get the vehicle down now, and let's run that purge seal test again and see what we got. All right, I'll get everything cleaned up and I'll get you guys back on the ground. Okay, with the vehicle back on the ground, let's take one more look at our PIDs. We're right where we should be, right around that 1.5 mark. Our key is on. Why don't we just go ahead real quick and run that special function again, running the purge seal test, and just take a peek at what our fuel tank pressure sensor is going to do. And I should see that voltage rise up and our vacuum increase, or our vacuum go negative, our millimeter Hg go negative. So I'm going to grab again our pressure sensor PIDs, And we have to fire this thing up. So we need vacuum from the purge solenoid. So as soon as I command this closed and start increasing purge, we should see this voltage reading right here start to go up, and we should see this start to go negative. So I'm going to go ahead, press increase. That's going to close my vent. There we go, we're closed. 10%. Let's increase 20. 30. Look at that already. We're going negative. Our voltage is rising up. All right, I think I'm going to seal it there. So I'm going to shut the system off. Now the front door and the back door are closed, just like that analogy that I used during the last class. Vent and purge are both closed. Now the system would be performing a leak test on this. We would see if we're able to hold enough vacuum for enough time. And just to show you guys how this is working, let's watch our scan tool. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to pull the gas cap, and we should see this thing return back to atmospheric or 1.5 volts. There we go. So we heard that whoosh again out of the filler neck when I pulled the cap. Perfect. Just go in and let's just do a code clear on this thing because I'm happy. We fixed the problem. Oh, and we did set a fuel tank pressure sensor circuit code when we disconnected that sensor. Okay, so here's a question. I'm going to clear this in just a second. But why now are we setting a P0452 when we weren't before? Why didn't we set a circuit low code beforehand? Why wasn't our fuel tank pressure sensor being flagged as bad? Well, the answer is if you look in your service information for a P0452 on this GMC Sierra truck, you'll find that the circuit low voltage reading has to be below 0.1 volts for more than 5 seconds. Our fuel tank pressure sensor never moved, but it never got below that 0.2, 0.22 volt mark, so we never flagged a circuit low sensor code for our fuel tank pressure sensor, even though our fuel tank pressure sensor was definitely bad. So keep an eye out for stuff like that, guys. The sensor wasn't moving at all, but our voltage was still above the threshold for setting the code for that P0452. Okay? Go ahead now, let's just clear these codes out. Okay, shut the key off. All right, so quick recap, what have we learned? We learned that a P0446 vent solenoid performance code does not mean that you need a vent solenoid every time. Sure, they're common for this thing, but I would feel sorry for this customer if he were to have that vent solenoid replaced at the other shop, and then the light's going to come back on, okay? We need to be testing and diagnosing and understanding how the system works. In just a few short minutes, we noticed something on our data PIDs, we tested it, we verified it, we replaced it, and now we retested it, re-verified, the system's operating properly, and we're going to have one happy customer. Again, guys, make sure you use the tape up on that shield there, otherwise you end up with bloody arms, okay? All right, I think that's going to be it for me today. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this CounterPoint episode. If you did, please thumbs up, subscribe, like our channel. Check us out on social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Search for Wells Vehicle Electronics on all of those. And of course, if you guys ever have any questions for me, please feel free to reach out and send me out an email. I will personally get back to it. So my email will be down below here. And all right, I think that's it for me today. Make sure to check out other classes, and we'll see you guys again next time in the Wells Tech Garage. Thank you.